Hello, it's Nicole, and welcome to another episode of That Engineering Chat. Very, very happy to be doing these in the studio. It's a little bit chilly, so if I look like I'm a little bit shivery, it's getting fresher. We're certainly getting into December now. So thank you for joining us again. And I'm really excited today to be talking to, they're great. Wurth Electronics, for starters, who were really supportive of what we did at the EDS show and the EDS show themselves, and have lots to talk about. And I did talk to this young man for a little amount of time, but not long enough. So we thought we need to get him back into the studio and have a proper decent chat. So I'd like to welcome James from Wurth Electronics, General Manager at Wurth Electronics, to the studio today.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're very, very welcome. So hopefully everyone that's listening and watching this has already seen you talking to me briefly at the show. It was all quite busy though, wasn't it? Let's be honest.
It was fast and furious, and
yes.
People milling around, so it's a bit nicer environment today to have
It's a bit nicer. We've got a cup of coffee.
Keeping us warm.
We can relax, keeping us warm. We can relax a bit. But tell everyone about Wurth Electronics, how long you've been there. Just a bit more. Obviously, people can know who you are, but for those that don't.
Sure. So, James East, General Manager for Wurth Electronics. I've been here for 12 years now coming up, and we are an electronic component manufacturer. So we manufacture components for the electronics market, and we supply those directly to the market and have done so for 25, nearly 30 years now globally. 25,
30 years, that's a long time. And how long have you been there? How long have you been there?
12 years myself, and in the UK we've been in the market for 20 plus years now.
So you've seen a lot of changes, I imagine, in those 12 years.
It's the changes have been crazy. Our team has got massively bigger. When I joined, there was out on the road 6 people externally and 3 or 4 internally. So now we've gone up to nearly 50 people in the UK, mixture of internal and external. So quadrupled, quintupled, whatever the number is, the size of the team to get to that level, and that's been multiplied across the globe really with all the countries that Wurth Electronics operate in. So the fundamental difference has been the size of the organisation and the number of people involved.
Yeah. And how, we did touch on this when we talked at the show, but how has it been the last, we've been talking about the pandemic with guests today. How has it been?
It's been rubbish, obviously, in the grand scheme of things. And as a business, electronics has been on a massive roller coaster in the last 2 years, as a lot of industries have. Ultimately, it's been really hard for everyone working from home, trying to keep in touch with people. That has its challenges. We've had, the Zoom quizzes that everyone's had, the Zoom meetings, which have worked overall really, really well, but it's been great to be back seeing people face to face, whether that's customers, your suppliers, people like yourself, exhibitions. It's more fun.
Definitely. If we sort of like recap all the way back to before the pandemic, or even if you go back to the year before, where was the sort of electronics industry at that time? What was sort of emerging? What was growing? What were the sort of what were the things that were looking ahead before we literally got slapped in the face with the pandemic?
It was still actually a really tricky period coming up to the pandemic. We had loads of, it's been a sort of the decade of global disasters, but situations. There was the US-China sort of trade war, which was affecting electronics in a big way. A lot of electronics manufacturing, or vast majority, comes out of China, whether it's component level or product level. So that was really becoming or making the market really unstable, because prices were at risk, deliveries were at risk, everything that was coming out of China or America, which is probably 80% of the global electronics market, was really tough. But the market itself was good. The business was good. I think when we were pre-COVID, automotive was a really big emerging or growing market for us as Wurth Electronics globally. It's obviously a humongous market, and has continued to do so, and is actually now coming back around full circle with what's happening with COVID.
Yeah. And what about, so you do LEDs. You do LEDs, capacitors, connectors, wireless modules and sensors. Is that everyone?
To name a few. Yep,
that's a few. There's a few there. Part of it. There's probably a few more than that too. But what about I can't even say the word. I can't say horticultural LEDs.
Horticultural LEDs, yeah. So LEDs, there's very, very basic LEDs, and there's some more complex LEDs and horticultural products. It's one of the I suppose a buzzword for everyone is being green or being environmental,
Yeah.
or how can they can reduce your carbon footprint, sustainability. All these kind of things are really important. And one big technology or market that's emerging is vertical farming, it's known as,
Okay.
or hydroponics. This
Yeah.
kind of thing where you've got a building or a warehouse or an infrastructure where you can basically grow things inside without having to have any external environments. You can control the water, the temperature, the humidity, and the light that the plant sees, which is what these LEDs do. They replace essentially what the sun does. So it gives out the same wavelengths and the same effect that the sun has on a plant, but you can control it with an LED. So that means you can have faster growth cycles. You can basically make the plant think you're having more days or more sunlight than you're having.
Yeah.
So you get better yield, you get shorter time between planting and harvesting your product, and it's better for the environment.
And is that something that's come up, like you say that's an emerging sort of growing, what applications is that used for? I mean, I've heard of a few, but what applications is that, can you give us some examples?
There's I suppose two. There's the mass production, and there's the how do you feed the people on a day-to-day basis. And you're starting to see now, for example, restaurants will have a container, big shipping container, loaded outside the back of their premises, and you can create your own farm within that. So you can have zero distance from farm to shop or farm to restaurant. So your parsley that's on top of your salad that day, they pick it out the back of their container and it grows again within 18 days. Whereas buying that out off the supermarket shelf, that's grown in a field and has a much higher carbon footprint. So there's let's say the niche or more high end, maybe restaurant type areas, but that is going to be copied across to, will every house have a big hydroponic container at the back of not necessarily, but
that's pretty cool. I like the idea. I like the idea of that more than a compost heap and all that kind of. I mean,
it looks
great.
Nicer.
Yeah, it's a bit tidier.
Yeah.
But is that something as well? Like you say, is that something that's come about because of the pandemic and because people have had to be a bit more resourceful? Was that always going to be a growing market?
I think it was always going to be a growing market. That it's not really been driven. I'd say accelerated from COVID, but I think everyone's looking at their lives over COVID. The environment just had the COP26 up in Scotland. I think all of these kind of industries and markets will get more and more focus. As the environment is so important for everyone. So I think you will see this kind of thing grow a lot in the next years.
That's interesting. And I mean, connectors, that's a relatively new line.
Some of them are, we've been doing connectors now. Our speciality really is, I suppose, going all the way back as a manufacturer. We manufactured or manufacture what we call EMC products. So we'll go really techie for a second, or semi-technical. So anything that if you put a mobile phone near a car radio, or when there were analog radios, or you hear this buzzing, anything basically that's not supposed to interact with another thing, or you can basically make sure your mobile phone will operate in any environment. Our products come on and make sure your desk, this microphone, the cameras, whatever, don't interfere with each other. And that's what we started in the market 25, 30 years ago. At the advent of CE marking, which is now in the UK going to be replaced by a different standard. But the long story short is that's our expertise, EMC, magnetics, and inductors. We've now expanded into these other areas such as connectors, which is relatively new for us, but it's a very, very big market for us as well.
And I mean, are they like waterproof and stuff like that? So you're saying about...
Yeah, the newer ones are definitely IP rated, and I'd say we had very industry standard connectors before, so they're little pin header type connectors, whereas the products that we're going into now, because we're looking at these other industries and more ruggedized connectors, so IP rated connectors, which means you can connect them, no water ingress, no dust ingress, so they can go top of a pole, they can go outside, they can go in your farm, they can go in an environment which is much more
so literally rugged. I mean, lots of areas that they could be different areas that they could be used, like what other industries are they being used in?
The great thing is they're not industry specific, they're really application specific. So you could have someone who's putting a data collector on the top of a pole, or it's part of a mobile phone network, or anything that goes up a radio mast. You could think that that's something that's got to have a cable coming out, then it needs to be waterproof. It could be something that's still just sits on the desk here, but someone just wants a more secure connection. And it's anything that you can't just basically pull out. It's a screw-in connector. It's waterproof. It's dustproof for for lots of different industries.
And you've got, I mean, so the wireless models and sensors, they're obviously of interest. Tell us a bit more about the range. These are specialist design areas, is that right?
Yeah, they're much more high technology, I'd say, than we think inductors are fairly high technology, but compared to something like an inductor or connector where you literally push it together, something like a wireless module, for example, Wi-Fi, everyone's heard of Wi-Fi. So if your phone or your laptop's got a Wi-Fi connectivity, there is going to be some sort of module in there that enables the Wi-Fi. These modules are very, very complex. They've got ICs in them. They've got you can choose from Wi-Fi, from Bluetooth, from various different frequencies within the radio world.
Yeah.
So understanding how these modules work takes someone who's got an expertise in that area to put them on their board or within their application. So customers get quite nervous about putting these kind of relatively new technologies. You could replace potentially wires on this desk here with
we talked about this last time.
I think we did.
I think we need to have another conversation.
I want to say some modules.
You want to tidy my desk up.
But everyone wants interconnectivity now. Everyone wants cable free. Everyone wants to interact with their mobile phone. Everyone wants an app for something, and that's where these modules are coming in. So the big buzzword still is IoT connectivity to the world, Internet of Things.
Yeah.
And these modules essentially enable you to do that. So Wi-Fi will connect you to the internet, or a Bluetooth connectivity will connect you to your phone or your device for you to be able to run an app, run diagnostics. So it saves, the implications for that are people who have a big maintenance team, or you don't know when something's broken, if it's a street light, because there's no connectivity to it. And if you put a module in, it will talk to a base station. So the person sitting in front of their screen says lamp 1, 2, 3, 4 in Tunbridge Wells is broken. They can send someone specifically to that to fix it, rather than wait for them to happen to be driving up and down the road and see it's broken, or go on their periodical maintenance trips.
Do you see us just going completely wireless eventually? Like everything.
We'll be close to it, I think.
Because they do just get in the way. Even this morning, we've all been getting a bit like, get these wires out of the way. But I mean, genuinely, like if it's as efficient without a wire, or more so maybe, then
the only limiting factors are more or less it's what power do you need for it, and what data rate do you need to transfer, and how reliable or do you need the connection? Do you have line of sight? So if you can see that thing, then you can put a wireless connectivity on it. If you can't, or it's tucked underground, then you physically have to have some sort of physical connection. But you can start. There is technology as well to get power transferred without a cable, but that's over very short distances. So wireless charging. So my mobile phone, a lot of mobile phones, you can put on a wireless charger. You can charge that. Cars are going to be able to do that, or that's what they're aiming to do in an efficient way. You can you've got a big charging area on your driveway. You pull your car up over it at night and lock it, and then it starts charging wirelessly that way.
I love that. I still want a car that I can charge.
As long as the cat's not underneath the car.
As long as the cat's not. No, don't leave the cat there. Definitely not. Okay, so all right. So I mean, there's other products that I want to talk about, but just to go back again. So you've kind of, things are going the way they are before the pandemic, and then we get into the pandemic. How did that sort of directly affect you? Did that change things up, or I mean, other than the obvious reasons, but talk to us a bit about that.
Yeah, everything was trundling along quite well in the market. Everyone obviously then went from work from home, and we had about a month window where people who were manufacturing products that require components were building what they had, and then there was not a lot that happened for 2 or 3 months because no one knew what to do. So no one could really build that much product other than what they had or what they were already needing to do. So the market did really cool down. No one was buying cars because no one was driving anywhere. There was a lot of those slowdowns. But then at the sort of 3 or 4 months into that, as we started coming out of that first lockdown, what people had done is buy new games consoles, new TVs. A hell of a lot of consumer electronics was being sold and manufactured globally, which then had this big knock-on effect and this sort of perfect storm of not enough supply versus demand for products. So lead times are getting much longer. Demand was getting huge. Automotive sales started coming up again. Everyone had 6 months of more cash. So they thought, well, let's buy a new car. And there is just not enough product to go into these end products to sell to the market. It's a complete supply versus demand.
So that's the logistics supply chain. That's the real problem that's going on.
That's the big pinch point for everyone at the moment. They can't get enough products, and people can't supply enough product to fulfill the market. So there's stories in the news all the time about different automotive companies who've got their car parks are full of half-built cars because they don't have the semiconductor products to put into them. The average car now has something like 65 ICs in it, compared to 10, 15 years ago it had probably 10 or 20. So the amount of electronics required to go in a car now is huge.
Yeah, I mean, I can vouch for that. My car's just always like this. I'm not going to mention what car I've got, but there's too many things that can go wrong in my car. You know, it's more like a plane than a car some days. What's that going to mean for us at Christmas? I mean, this is going to be out in December. What's that going to mean for the electronics industry? What's that going to mean for me? Am I going to be able to get my son his games console if I haven't ordered it yet?
Well, that's
quite literally
possibly not. It depends what console you want. There's the whole issue we had with not just then the supply and the demand of product physically being able to make enough. We've had a whole situation with global transport, not just the big stories around the ship that got stuck in the Suez Canal, but the knock-on effect of COVID in these big ports in China and the Far East in particular. There's not enough workers there because they're on different lockdowns. There's not enough containers available because they don't have enough lorry drivers to drive the containers back to the docks. So there's these whole knock-on effects, which has meant that there's some foods in supermarkets that they're saying aren't available. They're obviously quite keen to say everyone will have a turkey for dinner and everyone will have a present for Christmas, and I think they will. The reality is that some of the products we want to order won't be available for the next few months.
And what does that mean for the electronics industry? You know, how is that? Is there a knock-on effect with that? Because
huge. The engineers now are trying to, because they can't get hold of. Usually, it's this IC that they can't get hold of. The lead times on this is going out to has been 2 years. This time next year, it might be starting to resolve itself. So engineers who need to, or companies who need to make product that they can't get these key pieces of the puzzle, are having to redesign their products. And sometimes, as fast as they can redesign it, that new part they want to use is also obsolete. So finding a product or a supply chain partner or people within the supply chain who can support them on that is I think the biggest priority for engineers and people trying to manufacture a product right now.
Yeah, and I mean, the pandemic meant the slowdown in production, but are you seeing a return to volume at all?
Yeah, so since really this time last year, everything started to ramp up again as people were buying cars. People had bought all these products for their homes, and the market itself got more buoyant. We've been locked down for 3 or 4 months, 5 months, and people, we need to sell product to make money. There's been a quiet 3 or 4 months there, just as the economy was going back in the right direction. So was electronics, and we've had that for 3 or 4 or 5 months. So the beginning of this year and into sort of Q1 this year, that's when we started to get to the point where, in electronics market, there is this pinch point of we don't have enough product for the market. So customers were really having to, and we were working with customers saying, well, if you know what you need to build this year or what you want to build, usually customers in the market would maybe order 1, 2, 3 months of demand to plan that. But we're saying to customers, and customers saying to us, well, we want to plan a whole year's demand now and place those orders with you, because they need to have that product in 6 months' time to be able to build their product. In the past, they could do that the month before, but now with these lead times that are stretching for 6, 9, 12, 24 months, you can't do that. You have to place your order with your supplier 12 months before you need the product.
So that's there's kind of like two sides to that, isn't there? Because it's different problems that are coming up, but also it's quite nice if people are planning a year for business. Surely, if I come to you and say, well, I need to plan out my whole year, that's rather nicer than someone saying, I just want to plan next month and then come back to you next month and next month and next month. So there must be different trends emerging.
It is, and it's I think hopefully or eventually it will mean a shift in behaviour for customers and suppliers, which is better for everyone. Everyone can plan into the future. We're certainly doing that with our customers, and customers are doing that with us. And in the past, they would be able to just go a month before, right, can we have this? And it's going to be here in 4 weeks. It's saying we don't have it until 6 months' time. So even if you're not going to build anything for 6 months, you need to place those orders. And customers have responded really well to that. Because they've had to. And I think everyone doesn't want to get back to this situation again.
Because I think people were a bit nervous as well, aren't they? The people were a bit nervous about spending money and planning it again, but now you've got no choice. That's what you're saying. Basically,
if they want to build product, you need to order that 6-9 months ahead of time.
And where do you sort of see as a company and an organisation that things might get back to that kind of pre-March 2020 levels, or is it getting near to that sort of the industry in different ways, or do you think that it's just going to be totally different?
I think in terms of engagement, it's getting there, because customers need to be talking to their suppliers, whether that be at design stage, production, purchasing, all the way along, because so much is happening in terms of how people are engaging with the market. I think it's getting there. I think it'll still be into next year until we get back to what we're not saying normal anymore. We're saying a new normal or whatever, normal, can we? Whatever it's going to be.
Yeah.
And I think that will be at some point next year. We'll get a much better understanding of what normal is going to be going forward.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Who knows what normal is going to be? I mean, it's been an eventful year for semiconductors with shortages across the board due to COVID. But I mean, what sector's been most affected with IC lead times, would you say? What's been the most affected? Would it say automotive, consumer?
I think automotive and consumer, people are, when it gets into the news and people can't get their new whatever car they've ordered, people start to notice that when people can't get hold of an inductor or a piece of silicon, no one knows what that does or what that means. And when it affects them personally, which it is now, that's the biggest impact. And then of course with that massive increase of demand and shortage of being able to make enough product, that's driving costs higher as well. Everyone's seeing what's happening with inflation in the UK and globally, prices going up, and this is all this vicious circle of what's been happening.
So what Wurth Electronics, what plan Bs do you have to put in place with these long lead times and all these things? There must be plan Bs. There's always plan Bs.
Yeah, so for us it's about ramping up our production and getting as much production going as we can, and that's expanding our existing production facilities, so putting in different shift patterns, increasing the production from the existing sites that we've got, building and investing in new production facilities as well, so we have almost like redundancy. And we were already doing that before the pandemic. For us, having all our eggs in one basket, as it were, so just going to one country and having all our production there, or just having all of our production in one factory, it's really high risk. If that factory goes down, or there's some sort of natural disaster, or whatever happens in the world, and when we can't supply those, that's a lot of customers that we've let down. So for us, it's about replicating those production facilities in as many locations as we can, so we don't just have to rely on that one factory for that one product. Yeah,
because one of your like USPs is that it manufactures products, so there is no distribution channel.
Exactly. So for us, it's a massive benefit. I mean, we're a privately owned company, so anything the business ever makes, it just gets reinvested back into the company. We don't have to go and pay the shareholders. So in times like this, when we've had to ramp up our production, we've had to hold extra stock because customers some customers still need this next week. Well, if we don't have it in our warehouse, then you can't have it. So investing in the production, investing in the stock is massively important to be able to get that delivered to our customers. So that's one of our biggest strength. Well, it is our biggest strength. Full stop.
And I mean, so you were recently at a trade show that we met at.
We were.
How was that? You were obviously one of the main sponsors, which is fantastic. But how was the show for you? What was it like being out and about with people again?
It was fantastic. Yeah, we've all been stuck, in our home offices or wherever you've been working from for the last 18 months, and we've been managing to get out and see customers now for the last year or so. But to see that many people and engineers in one place was fantastic.
Yeah.
We were saying before, there was a good number of stands there. There was good planned footfall, but until you get there and see, are people all going to be there? Are they all actually going to attend on the day? It makes you a bit nervous. But for us, it was like a show almost pre-COVID in terms of the number of people that were there or wanting to engage with us and come to the seminars that were there. And come onto the stand. It was brilliant to see that many people.
And what was the interest like with the product ranges that you had? Sort of, was there anything particular, or was it just everything?
We try and get as much as we can on the product. Some of our products, smaller than a fingernail, so it's not. I can't really show you how what this looks like. But we had the little horticultural box on the front of on the stand that gets a lot of attention. We have a couple of our field applications engineers always on the stand, and some of them actually did some of the seminar talks there, and then actually have customers come back to the stand afterwards to go into a bit more detail. We've got our screens up and demos running, so anything we can have in-depth customer conversations with for us is a bonus. We love doing that as part of our job, and so we love talking to customers. You all look like you're having a lot of fun as well. No, it's good though. It was a really good atmosphere. We really enjoyed it. How about what do you see as the future of electronics then? How do you see that? I mean, we're talking about sort of there is no new normal, but things are hopefully going to start to change or get better for the better next year. What's sort of the future looking like for Wurth Electronics? Certainly, what your sort of plans that you can discuss without signing NDAs.
Exactly.
It's it's almost goes without saying for Wurth Electronics and Wurth companies that growth is kind of within our DNA really. Every year we look for growth, sales growth and company growth, be that in number of people, profitability, all these kind of things. But I think that the future for us is expansion into, which we've already started doing, and this will accelerate for us, is things like these wireless modules, the automotive market, new technologies like horticultural. But it's going to be going out to, I'm going to come waffling now. Pause that.
One of the obvious trends is digitalisation. So will Wurth Electronics add more digital elements to its product range? And then maybe you could expand on some of those.
Yeah, and not so much to our product range. I think for us, it's how do we engage with customers and how do customers engage with us.
Okay.
So if, everyone's got a website, pretty much everyone.
Yeah.
And
you like to think
it's all great having a website that says this is Wurth Electronics or this is Joe Blogs, but it's how do customers actually use that and how does it benefit for them? So for us, we spent a huge amount of time and investment again into the website to make that as easy and accessible for engineers as absolutely possible. So whether that's they need data sheets, whether they need 3D CAD models or further data on specific products, how do they get access to that with our website? But going a step further to that, what customers are going to need and what we've seen in the last 18 months with COVID and the pandemic is how do customers track what products they need. So having a full digital platform that they can access and see their order books, see and track their orders, how much stock does a particular manufacturer have, how much does it cost, all of this kind of interaction with us as a business I think is going to be really critical for, they're not just engineers, but for people who are more in the production and planning stages.
So do you think sales will sort of keep going down that way, where they literally they'll also be digital as well?
We'll never get to a point, and certainly not for Wurth Electronics, where we have only digital. For us, having people going talk to customers and having that engagement is critical for us. It will just be that we can utilise a digital platform to make it easier for customers to do a lot more of that transactional business. Why would you want to send an email to someone who then has to process something to send you another email back to load that into your system? You want that system to talk to that system, and it's done. And it's really
just want a quicker route to market, don't you?
Exactly.
So what other things do you think you've learned as a business out of coming through that pandemic? And because I get the feeling that everyone's sort of getting a bit savvier with what they're doing because they've had to. We've been sort of locked away for a long time. So like you're just saying there, people are looking at quicker ways of doing things and more efficient ways. What else do you see coming out of sort of, the pandemic, that things that are going to improve? Or
without being a
personal opinion,
futurologist, I think people will never stop wanting to deal with people, and having done a lot of visits in the last weeks and months, people love having that interaction, and I was fearful that we would really lose that. I think going back a year when we were all sitting at home for literally 3 months, are we ever going to go back to interacting with people? But I'm pleased by having things like the exhibition we did last month that people are still willing to go out to these kind of things.
Yeah.
And the future is really just going to be that flexibility. I think we're not going to have those standard 9 to 5 roles, not going to have 5 day a weeks. We're not going to have that kind of interaction with people anymore. Everything's going to become more flexible. People will carry on doing Zoom meetings. We need to decide what's the best Zoom meeting, what's the best face-to-face meeting. Absolutely. But I think the critical thing that we did, and we I think I have to keep going forward, is remembering everything's a people industry at the end of the day, and for us it definitely is, and dealing with customers is a personal thing. Doing things like this, it's brilliant. I think doing these things by digital means alone is, you don't get the most out of them.
No, I think it's like you say, it's a mix, isn't it? If you can find the perfect mix of things, then you can still, you can use digital to its advantage then, and you can use technology to its advantage, but you're not going to get away from good old fashioned personal just interaction and connection.
Yeah. I think on a business level as well, people are going to need, they want those relationships with customer or supplier, because you want to have someone you can actually speak to and trust. You just want to talk to a face or a website or a system or however good it is. You still need to go, James, I need you to come and help this, or whoever, come and help me with this.
Have you noticed, because certainly, I mean, from a business point of view as well, I would say that during the pandemic, those of us that have good relationships with our customers, you really realise that during a pandemic, because if you don't have a relationship with your customers, you would have no customers, I would argue. So do you think that's something that people are really appreciating now?
I think so, because we have that personal touch. For our company motto is it's more than you expect. So it is service level. It's completely service driven. It's personal relationship driven. You know, our technical team understand what that customer needs, and that customer trusts us to come and support them with that.
Yeah.
And it's totally about that personal connection for me. And I think that has to carry on into whatever the future looks like.
Definitely, without a doubt. So I mean, there are big. You're going to be doing more shows.
More shows.
What else are you going to be doing more of?
Leaving the house.
More leaving the house.
Yeah.
More leaving the house. How can people? I mean, what's the best way for people to find you, get in touch with you? Can people reach out to you on LinkedIn if they want to personally?
They can. Yeah, Wurth Electronics UK on LinkedIn, or we-online.com is our website, and all of our contact details are there. You can request product. You can request contact. You can call us, email.
Call us. Pick up the phone. No fax.
No, we don't have a fax anymore. I don't think. No,
we've got rid of that. At least.
Got rid of that.
I mean, I can't think of anything else that we haven't covered today.
I don't think so.
I think we've covered a lot. It's been great to get to know you guys. I think you all do a great job, and certainly you must have to be very knowledgeable being a general manager at Wurth Electronics. That's all I can say.
I'll try.
You've been there for 12 years, but best of luck with everything, and thank you so much for coming in to talk to us. And maybe we can have a recap in the future.
See you at EDS next year.
We'll definitely see you at EDS.
Whatever the new normal looks like.
We'll definitely see you at EDS next year. But thanks for coming in, James.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Cheers.